Just as President Joe Biden announced a path to citizenship for illegal immigrants married to U.S. citizens, this morning the Supreme Court decided that Americans do not have a constitutional right to challenge the Department of State's denial of spousal visa applications. The High Court rejected Sandra Munoz's plea to review the department's rejection of her Salvadoran husband's visa in a 6-3 ruling by Justice Amy Coney Barrett. The ruling said in part that U.S. citizen spouses don't have their own liberty interest in their spouse being admitted to the country, and that federal courts can't second-guess visa denials for spouses of American citizens. And in another 8-1 decision, the Supreme Court ruled that protective orders can bar people accused of domestic violence from owning firearms. Friday's ruling overturned the Fifth U.S. Court of Appeals. Hunter Biden's hopes of getting his conviction regarding his gun charges overruled by the U.S. Supreme Court vanished in an 8-1 Second Amendment decision today. The Daily Caller reports that the High Court ruling upholds a federal law restricting individuals convicted of domestic violence from possessing a firearm in the United States versus Rahimi case. Chief Justice John Roberts wrote in the majority ruling, quote, since the founding of our nation's firearm laws have included provisions preventing individuals who threaten physical harm to others from misusing firearms. Biden's legal team had planned to argue the prohibition of drug users from owning guns is a violation of the Second Amendment. Legal scholar Jonathan Turley said, quote, Hunter Biden just lost a Hail Mary toss, end quote.
The Supreme Court ruled yesterday that a former councilwoman and grandmother was put in jail as a form of political retaliation. Fox News reports in the town of Castle Hills, Texas, 72-year-old Sylvia Gonzalez and the Institute for Justice sued Castle Hills Mayor J.R. Trevino and other officials, alleging they removed her from office for criticizing the city manager, violating her First Amendment right.
I go over to the mayor and he asks me where is the petition that was turned in. And I told him I didn't know where it was. He proceeded to tell me that he thought it was in my binder, that he could see a little clip. And I found the petition to my surprise, and I handed it to him, and he said, you probably picked it up by accident. And I thought nothing of it, but I was thrown in jail.
Gonzalez's initial case was tossed by the Fifth Circuit Court, which believes she didn't present the required evidence to advance a retaliatory arrest case. However, the Supreme Court reversed the Fifth decision Thursday. The Institute for Justice reports Sylvia Gonzalez said, quote, this has been a nightmare for the last 5 years. It's kept me up at night, but finally I can sleep. So let's talk with the Convention of States Action President, Victory News contributor Mark Meckler. Welcome to Victory News, sir.
Good to be with you. Thanks for having me.
All right, quick question. It's really an easy one. Did the Supreme Court do the right thing ruling on behalf of the 72-year-old grandmom, Sylvia Gonzalez?
Yeah, they did. I mean, obviously, this was political retaliation. The difficulty was the interpretation of the statute, and the statute, it seemed to require an exact parallel situation where the law hadn't been used against somebody else. She couldn't present that exact parallel. That's why she was thrown out of court. And the Supreme Court said instead, well, she doesn't have to show that. She just has to show that there was actually retaliation against her. And I think she showed that.
All right, I'd like to get your views on two Supreme Court decisions today. The Second Amendment decision keeping those who threaten physical harm to others from misusing firearms, and the other one confirming federal courts cannot second-guess visa denials of American citizen spouses.
Yeah, on the Second Amendment decision, I thought that was interesting. That case came up. It had a very bad set of facts. You have a guy accused of domestic abuse, wants to get a weapon. He's being kept from getting a weapon. And by the way, the attorneys that presented it did an incredibly poor job. It was a junior public defender. You never see that before the Supreme Court. I think the ego of the public defender over the interests of his client prevailed here, and I think that's a really bad idea. I think it was malpractice. People are excited who like gun control about this case, but the reality is Roberts really limited the ruling, and he said this is not really going to be a much of a limitation on Bruen. He didn't use the Bruen name in particular, but he warned people about not reading this too widely. I thought it was a pretty decent decision.